we pushed our repo, specifically our master branch, to GitHub. Let's see if this was successful now by going back to GitHub. In here, I'm still on the personal access token page. So let's go back to the menu option and to our repositories now. There we have our GitHub Basics repository. Let's click it. And in here, yeah, this looks successful. We are now inside our master branch. You can find the master branch here. We are in the code ribbon, and here you can select the different branches we have. We only have this master branch here. And inside this branch, you can see that we have a folder. And if we click onto this folder, you see that this folder contains the M1 text file that we created locally in Git. This means our first push was successful. What if we want to add a second commit here to our remote repository though? Well, for this, we could add another file here locally in Git. So I'll add the m2.txt file here for the second commit and put it into the master folder. Yes, I want to move it. Now we can clear this and add this newly created file and commit this change with the M2 keyword here. And now we can again push this information to GitHub. For this, we can use the git push command once again. Now, as we already added information to the specific repository and to the specific branch, maybe git push is enough. So we might be able to omit origin master, so the specific URL and the branch we want to update here. So let's see if this works. No, this doesn't work because the current branch named master has no upstream branch. We could change this here with this command, but as I said, upstreams will be covered a bit later in this module. So as long as such upstreams are nothing we use or something we know, we again, well, have to clear this maybe to make it better readable. And then we again have to add the git push command and now refer to the origin URL and then the master branch. With that, the remote repository gets updated. So if we go back to GitHub now and navigate into the project folder again, you see, we still have this master folder, and in there we now have both our commits. Where can you see now that these are two commits? Because at the moment we only see these two files. Well, if we go to history over here, you can see the commits made. So we first made this M1 commit and now the M2 commit here. You can also find the unique ID of each commit over here, but that's also something we covered already throughout this course. By the way, in case you wonder why we didn't have to enter our credentials again, so basically the token that we added, you can simply open the Windows Credential Manager. So if you hit the Windows key here and then type Credential Manager, so it's this option up here, you can then go to Windows Credentials, and then you can scroll down up to the Git, word here. So these two entries here, these are responsible for the fact that we don't have to enter our credential again if we want to interact with GitHub here. You can, of course, also delete these here if you want to enter a new token by clicking onto here, onto this down arrow, and then onto remove. That's, of course, not what we want. I just want to make sure that you know where these tokens are stored. So let's close this. So these are the first steps when it comes to bringing our local repos info to a remote repo. But how does this work under the hood actually? Because back in VS Code, if we clear this once again, we can now simply enter our git branch command once again to display all our local branches, so all branches created in Git so far. If we do this, we can only find the master branch, which makes sense, I guess. If we enter another command though, git branch -a. This gives us a different result though, because here we have this master branch, so this local branch, and we have this red entry, which is something we don't understand at the moment. To understand how Git and GitHub interact though, and to use these tools efficiently, we have to understand this red entry and a bit more. Do we have more branches now? Well, the answer is yes, and let's explore why this is the case. With Git remote at origin, we established a connection between our local repository and the remote repository. So both repositories are now able to connect, so to say. The thing is that this is not related to our branches until we really pushed something to this remote repository. And this pushing process is a bit more complicated, or maybe we should say it involves some more steps than it may have seen. Let's have a look at this approach we did again from a theoretical perspective. We have our local branch on our machine, this master branch we created. We then ran git add remote origin. You know how this works. So as I said, we have a connection to the repository available. And then we ran this command here, git push origin master. So we said git should push our local changes from this branch to the origin, so basically to our remote location of the repository, and specifically to the master branch. We didn't have this master branch, so it was created then, but this is what this command told us. Now, what then happened behind the scenes is, well, Git first created a so-called remote tracking branch. That's this red branch you could see when we added git branch -a in VS Code in the terminal. Now, this remote tracking branch is basically between our local branch and the remote branch. So it's kind of a local copy of the remote branch. As we don't have a remote branch yet, it's at the moment a copy of our local master branch. Because what's happening here now is that our changes from the local master branch are copied, so to say, into this remote tracking branch. And the remote tracking branch knows where this should go to because of origin master. You can see this in both cases. So we first have our master branch, and here we have the remote's origin master branch. So remote stands for that's a remote branch in the end, and origin and master, well, we know origin master, well, our repo and our branch. And as soon as the remote tracking branch was created, well, we also add these changes to our master branch, and that's now the remote branch in our origin repository. So this is the flow. So if you run git push origin master, that's what's happening. It's very important to understand that there is no direct connection between our local branch and the remote branch. So any kind of push or pull operations always involve a remote tracking branch. And as I said, the remote tracking branch is a local copy of the remote branch, but the remote tracking branch is nothing we change here. We work in our local branch in this case, but it's basically part of the updating process. So it goes from master branch to remote tracking branch and then to updating the remote branch. This is not only the case for pushing branches. We can of course also retrieve data from our remote branch. This works with git pull right here in origin master. And if we run such a pull command from our local branch, well, then we first update our remote tracking branch again, because we tell Git to update our origin master branch again right here and right there. This means internally Git understands that we should update this remote tracking branch with the git fetch command. Git pull is just a combination of git fetch and git merge. So we first say fetch the latest changes from our remote master branch and add these changes to the remote tracking branch. And then, that's the second step of git pull, merge these changes into our local master branch. It's very important to understand this flow right here, and I said that already, to understand that there is no direct connection between the local branch and the remote branch. The local branch is locally on our machine, the remote branch is the branch on GitHub, and the remote tracking branch is a local read-only copy of the remote branch. So with that, we always update the remote tracking branch first, no matter if we push information or if we pull information, and then update the local branch or the remote branch. At this stage of the course, we always have to add the remote repository's name, so origin, and the branch name to our push or pull commands. We can also omit these, but this is something we'll explore in a few minutes. However, that's the theoretical concept we have right here now. Let's go back to our project and let's explore this in a bit more detail.